All right. So, hey, sorry about that. It's called nature. It happens when a lightning bolt knocks out something down the road and knocks all your power out. Kind of interesting time here over here at Valor Venom Studio. When a lightning bolt knocks out something down the road and knocks all. But hey, real quick, we're talking with THEE Troy Shanks. I'm also here with the American Treasure, Paul Leonard. But we just want to go ahead and talk about the sponsors of today's shows. We have Icelandic Water. We have Trolley, the candy company. And we also have Nabisco for their donation of all the Oreos that helps us achieve all of our strength goals. And I mean, you could joke all you want. I believe some of these things have special characteristics. For instance, I know if you want speed, you take red trolleys. If you want power, you take the green trolleys. Am I right or wrong on that, Troy?
Absolutely right.
It's part of the science.
It's science, man.
I'm going. This is my third semester at a community college. I think I know what I'm talking about. Trust me. All right, so we left off talking about Troy and pretty much what he was doing for his for powerlifting and moving into become an official and talking about oh boy, here this is where the stroke comes into play. Talking about Denison and talking about USPA and moving forward from there. So I think you left off that you were talking about how you got into those roles and whatnot, and then going from there. Because looking on here, one of the questions I want to ask you is, what were your totals? Because I have a website pulling up here at the Open Powerlifting, and I don't exactly know how to read this correctly. So I'm just going to ask you, what were your totals that you remember or that you had?
So I don't actually remember any of my totals.
Okay.
I'm probably the worst strength athlete in that regard. I think my best deadlift was 620, whatever that kilo would be, 620 something, right? My best like squat, and these are all in comp. But I'll caveat that with I do believe as a power lifter, you're only as good as your numbers from your last comp. So these were my comp numbers over the years. Best bench was a 440. And I think my best squat was 611. If I remember right.
On here, just on here, it says 600.7 was your best squat. Now that was wrapped. Okay. But your bench is spot on. Your bench was 440.
Okay. Yeah. So and those were never in the same meet, I don't believe. So
no, they weren't.
I am terrible. I do have a good friend that he remembers most of my totals and my numbers from every meet. If I could phone a friend, I would. But yeah, honestly, like with powerlifting, I just kind of, once I transitioned over into strongman, I kind of forgot all those, and where I left off. Not that I thought I was leaving it, in the rearview mirror or anything, but just kind of filled my head with some new personal best, on the strongman side. Now to that regard, I will say my last comp in 21, the one we did in Flagstaff, the Lumberjack, was a terrible meet for me. Prep went terribly. I got real sick, like a couple weeks before.
Oh my God, you did. Jesus.
Yeah. I think I dropped down to like 265, and it was during that time frame of the old C word pandemic. So we don't know if we're going to blame it on that or just a fluky thing. I do think the body kind of tells you when it needs to rest up, and like walking around at 290 at the time. Maybe it was just tired of being 290 and wanted to be lighter for a little bit. But now I remember 3 weeks out from that comp walking in, and it was literally all I had to do a set of 5 with 135 on deadlifts. It just, I was destroyed. So no excuses there. You're only as good as you show up on comp day, and maybe I did something in the prep that didn't work right for me. So going into October, I have some very outlandish goals for myself. And then I have some realistic ones that I'm going to try to hit on my second attempts, and then just go for broke on the thirds, which is usually what I do. I usually try to only go 6 for 9 at a comp. Because then I know I'm really pushing myself. First is a good solid opener. Second is a PR for the platform, and then thirds is usually just go for broke and let's see how dumb we can get. So that's the goal of this comp. Goals, and I'll say that 750 squat wrapped, 460 bench, and a 750 deadlift. Now, me being self-aware, those numbers will probably be 45 pounds lower on the squat and deadlift, but I think the bench might be 460 to 470, I think. So just trying to be realistic. My grip sucks. I've really been trying to hammer grip. So if I can get my deadlift over 7 in this comp, I'll be happy. And squats to me is just one of those fluky things that one day it's there and the next day maybe it's not. So I'll be wrapped. That'll be no suit or anything, but those are the lofty goals. So we'll see in October. Maybe have me on the day after and I'll either be really happy or I'll be very upset. Yeah.
Before then after the comp. That's what we should do. Yeah, just real quick. Just check in with them.
To just pure pessimist. So yeah, I do. I kind of miss the powerlifting aspect of it. So this new block of training, and I program myself. I feel like I second guess myself less than I would second guess somebody else. There's only one person that's ever programmed for me that I stuck to for the entire program. And that was Brandon Lilly. I found one of his programs and ran with that one, and it did me very well. So I still implement some of those ideas into my training these days, especially deload week. I feel amazing coming out of prep onto deload using his principles. So
why don't you go ahead and explain to people what the deload actually is? I mean, that's what the show is called, the deload. And Paul, you can chime in also too. I want to hear like what you did for your deload, pretty much prep going into the competition.
So you want to go first, Paul? Or you want me to?
Well, I'll touch. Yeah, we can both. I'll start. And I echo as an athlete that picked up the Westside Barbell principles in the mid '90s. I echo what Troy said. Later, Brandon Lilly had been at Westside and had learned a method and sold a method called the Cube, which is like how you train and you don't. Basically, I read it. I own the program. I bought it. I liked it. You try not to peak all your lifts at the same time. And then you have an assistance day where you do a lot of assistance. And I found I did it for a while. I was very successful. I liked that program. And I liked it. The idea that, when you're a powerlifter, you're trying to bring 3 lifts to total on one day and hit your bests. And it's hard. The deadlift peaks out earlier and you can't deadlift as much volume and as intensity as you can do the squat and deadlift for a myriad of reasons. And these are things you learn. But one thing that came up when I was in my 20s, there was no such thing as deload. And then as I got, the stronger you get, the realize you don't go up linearly. So deload became a day off or not a day off. It became a time where you did like 60% of your, there's 2 variables in the gym, volume and intensity. And intensity is a mathematical formula. It's not a feeling. And 80%, over 80% is strength training, but 60% is something that's like light and restorative. So, and with Louis Simmons' idea of 3-week waves, it became a thing when you were training hard, you did need a week off. It would, when you train with a bunch of people, it was more, you had to plan it, but you also have to be instinctive. If you go in the gym, you don't feel good. And I experienced that over the years with different training crews. Some of the older guys wouldn't even just show up unless they'd be goaded into. And we'd look and say, "Oh man, what's up?" Those guys had a long career, and I learned, And now Troy's generation has deload down more to a science. It's instinctive, it's art, and it's science. So he can speak to it better than I can now.
Yeah. So for me, when I deload, what I've learned works the best, and again, it came off of that Cube method. I'm at 30% of my lifts, and that's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I'm at 30%. I'll bench twice in the week, and the bench will go to 50%. That's the only one that'll creep up above 30%. And then I do something a little bit different. I changed, maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know. For other people, it might be a bad thing. But I changed my diet up a little bit. As hard as it is for me, I cut out all simple sugars. And I really pound the water, but I stretch a lot more. And I do a lot more cardio. So I'll do 15 minutes of a warm up and I'll do 30 minutes after a workout. And for me, that just really drives out that inflammation, especially getting rid of that simple sugar. So for me, the deload is both the diet aspect and that training change. But what I'm after for the deload is being able to kind of make it that last week and before the comp on Saturday, and give my body that rest, but still that what'd you call it, Paul? That active recovery type aspect. If you just sit there, you're going to get stiff. So you can't just keep your just sit on the couch and just chill out until comp day. I guarantee you're going to hurt yourself that way. So it's staying active, but also helping. And that's one of the weeks that I really hammer in. Whether it's strongman or powerlifting, I use the same principle. The pause. I make everything a little bit more ingrained in that muscle memory that week. So if I have an event, let's say a medley event, I'll go lighter on the medley, and I'll go 30 to 50% on the medley weights. But it's focusing on those transitions into the next implement. And I'm a believer that that'll shave seconds off your time, right? Which could mean 2-3 places for you. So on both ends of it, powerlifting and strongman, I think the deload is important. I don't implement them as much as I should probably. Most people will do a 12-week block and then do a deload week, and I'm not that type. I'll do a 12-week block and then change it up a little bit and go into another 12-week block. So that's kind of my downfall with programming myself, is I'm always hungry for more.
Now, I had Vinny on here earlier talking about, pretty much a good deload and like trusting your coach. And the one question, and I've always seen it where I've been training myself, and then you have somebody who you programmed or Vinny's program or maybe Ray's program, where it's kind of like they're looking at their sheet and they're kind of like, man, I don't know why he has me doing such low numbers. And I'm like, well, what'd you do last week? And then he tells you numbers. I'm like, well, that's why, because you literally were going for broke last week and you have to take a break. So I guess because you train not typically, but what would you say to somebody that you come across that does that, where they want to go heavier, but yet their coach in the paper says don't? It's almost like
what would I tell them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So especially if they're like my client, I tell them two things. I tell them, in that cliche of trust the process, but I'll try to word it a different way. Hey, and as a coach, I explain things. I think one of your jobs as a coach isn't just to churn out a program, but it's to make them understand why they're doing this movement. Why are we doing these weights? Why are we doing this deload? If you can help them understand that, they'll trust you more. But also, they can go off and train themselves or train somebody else, and they have that base, right? So I just, hey, look, this is why we're doing the deload. You got to give your body some recovery time, and ligaments and tendons don't get as strong as muscles do, and you got to look out for that health as well. So those deload weeks are important for your tendons. And then the other thing I'll tell them is, okay, come comp day, you go heavier, because I have a couple clients that they'll shoot me a text and say, hey man, I'm feeling really good. Can I max out on squats today? Well, sure. You're an adult. Go ahead. However, you're derailing the program, so you have to understand that. And then if you're going for deload and you're coming to me asking for, more weight, I'm going to, hey, okay, but on Saturday, when you miss your numbers, this is why. Okay. I take very little blame at that point. So you gotta put that responsibility back on them. And there's a reason why they came to you as a coach. They trust your training style. They trust your your intuition, I guess, right? So you just have to make them realize, re-understand that, I guess. Like, hey, you asked me to program you for a certain reason, so let me work my magic, and I promise it'll pay off.
That's literally what I try and tell them, at least in that aspect. It's like, dude, you hired that guy as a coach, right? Yeah. Okay, well, there's a reason why you did it. Obviously, you see the numbers he puts up. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay.
Yeah,
it's like,
and this is how we did it.
you follow the yellow brick road to Oz, man.
And that's honestly, that's why I can't have a coach. Again, I take in information from coaches, that'll share their free knowledge with me. But I can't have a coach because I constantly second guess everything. I am that person. Hey, why am I going so light this week? Instead of just being like, hey, I hired him, so I'm that guy. So when I get that, I understand that aspect to it. It is a little frustrating because I'm like, well, no, shut up. Like, I know what I'm doing, but then I think about it and I'm like, well, I would be doing the same thing. So
well, that's why I wanted to ask you that question. Cause like your mentality, cause I'm not gonna say you train kind of like how the old Coleman training was heavy all the time, but seeing you go light, it's usually something's going on or you got like an ache that you're really concerned about. That's kind of where you pull back. And just by knowing you through the years, so that's how I can tell kind of where you are body wise and health wise in that stage in the training process.
Yeah. And I rarely drop under 70-75% for a regular training session unless something's, unless I got a niggle somewhere. I am more accident prone for that reason. So maybe those little ailments and niggles happen a little bit more often than they should. But, I'm I'm an idiot. And on Sunday I went running bases with my daughter at the park. We're training for her softball career, and
right.
She wanted to see me do it. And I was like, okay. And I took off and got halfway across the field and my hamstring starts locking up. So I'm babying that now, so,
right.
But I still hit, 70% on squats last night, so it can't be that bad. Right. So,
right. I think I have you on camera. Like I said, it's a gym lift. It's not on the floor, but didn't you do 675? I thought maybe 2 years ago or last year, I thought you did
on a squat.
Yeah. On a squat wrapped.
So my best squat wrapped right now in the gym is 705.
Maybe it was 705 that we got on camera.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who was wrapping me. It was on the very far. It was before the expansion of the gym. It was on the rack all the way towards the cable racks. Yeah. 675 happened. And actually, what the funny story is? That 675 is how I got my invite to Utah for the World Strength Games up in St. George, Utah in 2020. That was my first combat.
He saw
that.
Nice.
Yep. He saw that video and shot me a message and said, hey, man, come up. I want you to compete at my competition. So I think I had 3.5, 4 weeks notice. So went up there and did that one. Ended up taking third. That's actually the competition I met Marshall's in at.
Yeah.
So, which has been great for my friend crew and I really do consider him a mentor for my strongman career. So
CJ had good words about Marshall too, and obviously I've known Marshall through you guys as well, and I've gone up to his little compound he's got over there in Santan Valley and train and watch them. And when you're doing it with them, and when you're like watching him train and all of his athletes he has up there, there's a reason why they have a monster factory where they're just constantly producing people going to nationals, people taking first places and being champions. I mean, it is
Brittany, Steve, Eric's going pro this year.
Yeah.
It's insane. Steve
just turned 50. Steve just turned 50, was able to log press 300 pounds, last year. It's just like, how do you do that? Because he's stronger than he was, 10 years ago when he was younger. And then
you said, second year in.
Yeah, the second year in, and then you got the freaking Rican over there. He's doing this thing too. Reels is just so he's accident prone. It's like not even anything crazy. It's just that like he's pushing past that mental barrier where it's like your body goes, oh, you don't want to keep going? Stop.
Yeah, and he doesn't. Yeah, there is a reason why they are the freak animal fitness crew. That is for certain.
Sir.
So
and then you and him actually share the my professional expert opinion as being a press guy. Doing the stupidest thing you could have done is doing a full-blown strongman competition and then going and do stack monsters the next day. I mean, we were there from 8 o'clock till like 6 o'clock, went home, and then we started stack monsters at like 9. I was just like, are you out of your mind? But you guys did it. You and Marshall both did it.
That was a great day. That was a good weekend for me. I podiumed at both of those contests, so we're good.
You absolutely did. And I'll say this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you found out, because at Strength Fest, Marshall was technically supposed to be in a class lower than you, but when it came down to weight, he was in your class. And from what I kind of saw, just from your body language, you're kind of like, oh, well, shit. I guess second place will be okay for this one, because you kind of thought that maybe he was going to take, because he's a professional. I mean, he's a international professional strongman that goes to competitions all throughout the world. But what I love is that as the show went on and the events started happening, you realize you were hanging right there with him. And, and of course, you two talking and yucking it up, and there's no animosity. It's just,
no, not at all.
I think it got to the point where you'll like this one, Paul. It got to the point there's squats for reps. Is literally they go, how many are you going to do? And the agreement was, well, I'm going to do this many. Okay, I'm going to do the same amount. And then I think it was Marshall went first, and he ended up doing like 10 more than what he said. And you're like, son of a bitch. Now it's hot.
I told him, I was like, let's just tie this event, man. Like, let's not do it. And so that was 2020. That Strength Fest, right?
Yes, sir.
So that was late. That was October of 2020. So in July, right, I'd gone up to St. George, met Marshall. He took second in that competition in the open heavyweight class. I took third. And to be honest, you know, politics and everything else aside, he should have had first. There was some scoring issues, and some confusion with the scoring. So he should have had first, and I still would have taken third, so it didn't matter to me anyway. So yeah, I walked into Strength Fest already defeated. You know, in my mind, he had the top of the podium, and honestly, I think it was just a better set of events for me, which is crazy because it was a press, a squat. The Husafel carry, I think by the time that came around, you know, we had to do a keg press medley, and then
the kill barrel, the first thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that wheelbarrow, and he destroyed me on that one.
Oh,
that thing was terrible. But yeah, I was able to come off, and I took first in that competition.
Yes, you did.
So that was my second competition back, and that one I taken first. So I took a third and a first, and I was like, okay, maybe this is the era I belong in. Maybe I did enough groundwork that I can be competitive in this sport now.
No, absolutely. And I say all the time, you know, talking to some of the guys that, because, yeah, shoot, we've been training I joined Beast Strong, I think 2018, and, you know, been kind of training with you guys. Haven't gone to competition except for the powerlifting one we did. But it's crazy, like looking at the numbers and, you know, looking at where we thought was like cool. Like I even told CJ when he was on here, it's like, remember when a log press at 250 was cool? Like, oh yeah, that's awesome. You guys are now getting close to 4, which is absolutely absurd. I mean, he wants to do a 4. I think of the class above of 90, and I'm just like, that's
CJ.
Insane. Yes, he was talking about that in the show. He wants to do a 4. I'm going, oh my god! And it's a guy that weighs right now about 189 pounds.
Yeah, I think he can do it. You know, CJ's a freak. You know, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. He literally is just a freak of nature. And you won't meet a nicer guy that loves the sport more. You know, so it's really good to see that. And you know, just watching him progress, and now he's at these competitions, and you know, the sky's the limit for the kid. So it'll be really cool to see where he goes. And you know, and I use that term loosely, but I mean, I think he's 27, 26.
He's 20. I think he's 28. He's not
28 now.
Yeah, I think he's 28.
Yeah.
I think he's 28 now because he's not 30.
I mean, under 30 and hitting those types of shows and hitting that kind of podiums, you know, that's it's very impressive. So it's going to be exciting to see where that goes. I've been talking to him about static monsters for this year. And I think he's going for the log record at static this year.
For his weight class, he's trying to go for it. In fact, I think I have the text message on my phone.
Yeah, I think he's going to go U90 for the log record. So that'll be exciting.
Absolutely. Paul, like I asked Troy a little bit ago, as you were doing this, who was kind of like, I guess, your rival, but you're also your like kind of like mentor or the mentee relationship that you had, coming up through your sports?
Well, powerlifting, I was fortunate. I built a really good gym in my garage, and I attracted the best powerlifters in Southern California. And I was there for about 5 years. We had a really high level gym. And then in a powerlifting meet, I overtrained and I hurt my knee. So I met two strongmen, Kevin Kinsey and Charlie Captor. And Charlie ended up going pro. This is 20 years ago, 2001. And strongman was really in its infancy in the United States. There was hardly any contests. But they helped me rehab my knee by doing yoke, drag, and strongman exercises, tire flips. So after training strongman for 9 months, I did Jamestown, it was called Railtown Days, but it was a strongman contest in Northern California. And then that next year we went over to Boston, Art McDermott show, which was a pro-am. If you placed top 5, you'd get your pro card. So, wow. Charlie Captor, Kevin Kinsey, then we brought along Scott Brengel. But we were the three of us were really the nucleus of it. We had some friends that would train with us. And then I had always trained Josh Bryant in powerlifting. He used to come down from Santa Barbara about 150 miles to my house in Yorba Linda in Orange County. But then I brought Josh over, and Josh started doing strongman with us. I relocated to Texas, and Josh got in with Ode Hagen for a while because he was still in Northern California. Then Josh followed me to Texas, and now he's over in the Dallas area. So it's always, my experience has always been build a crew and they'll come. Build a training facility, a hall, a garage, in our case, a gym, and it'll come. That was my experience. So it was my powerlifting and strongman days in Southern California were amazing. When I got to Dallas, it was a little different. I had a young family, so I went back to powerlifting, but then Josh and I got into those Atlanta strongman competitions, which were sanctioned by CAS. It was trap bar, bench press, military push press, pull up with weight with a parallel grip, and then a grip exercise on an inch dumbbell handle. So you would total out in those 5. Those were under the auspices of a federation called the Atlantis. So they did about 4 or 5 of those, and then those died out in the mid 2000s. But as it did, traditional strongman as we know it now really took off. And as like when we had Ubu, when Troy won 2 weeks ago up in Scottsdale, and President Willie Wessel sat with us, he said by the end of August that'll be the 1,000th show that they've administered in the United States. So the growth since 2004 has been exponential. It's amazing and it's awesome, and it's led to the performance now. Like Troy, our friend CJ talked about the weekend Troy won up at Ubu. CJ became the first world champion in the under 90. And when I was doing strongman, it was all just how the biggest guys. Then they started with a 231 pound class, came on a little bit later. And now there's multiple classes, and the performance of the athletes is absolutely amazing.
What do you think that has anything to do with, in your personal opinion? Because like, I remember like watching ESPN like classics of growing up, or ESPN2 when they had that, and you'd always see like the strongman events from like the 80s, like with Kazmaier or Simerson and on all those guys on there, and Pujanowski. And then you're saying that it kind of died off a little bit, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, World's Strongest Man started in 1977, and it was held in the United States. And then Franco Colombo ran with a refrigerator, and then there was a lawsuit. So unfortunately, they had to take it offshore. And when it did, it became huge in Europe and in England, but it really died in the U.S. And then it was still on ESPN, and they were still contesting World's Strongest Man. You would find it on ESPN at the time. But then in the central United States, like Chad Coy, Brian Neese, Brian Schoenfeld, the Indiana people and Illinois people stood it up first in the mid 90s. And then Texas started something with Bill Holland in the late 90s. Then a guy named Chris Maverick started it, and that's where Willie Wessels competed in the St. Louis area. And then there was only one strongman federation in the United States when I was promoting, and it was Willie and Dion owned it together. So when we promoted promoted the initial California's Strongest Man in 2002, Dion flew out to it. Willie couldn't, and she administered it. And we had guys like Kevin Nee. Kevin Nee came out from Boston and in lightweights, and he became if you don't know him, Sean, he became the first teenager to compete in World's Strongest Man. He almost beat Marius Pujanowski. He deadlifted 900. He lived in Tempe. He came out and went to school at ASU and was one of the original Arizona freaks before really Jerry Pritchett took off with guys like Ryan Bakke. And there was a lot of freaks, and John Lane. There was some real freaks up in Phoenix at the time. So it's if you look at it, it's one big group, one big dysfunctional but strong as hell family that when you start talking, it's not, and it doesn't have a long history. It's actually quite similar to MMA in the United States. It's taken off exponentially in the last 20 years for sure.
Troy, who were your I guess kind of like the guys you look up to in strongman when you were watching it, obviously because you're a fan of it. And I'll give a shout out to Carrie, your wife right now. She's the only one I know that can literally name every single strongman winner from the first one to the modern one, which was that blew me away.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a skill to that. Paul's sitting here and he can tell you who and where and what their cousin's name was, and it's impressive to have that kind of ability to retain information like that. And she does. She can tell you every winner of the Olympia, and she can tell you every winner of World's Strongest Man. So it's really cool. I mean, she puts on the archives. I have all the archives saved on the DVR. So she'll, I'll come home and she's watching the DVR archives, but I would say John Paul Sigmarsson. I loved watching him. Harry Badenhorst, loved watching him. The ones that won though, definitely Brian Shaw. I still, the guy's incredible to be able to do what he does, and now everybody's like, oh well, he's getting old. He's still like in the top 10. He's still in the top 5 strongest men in the world. And that's what's funny. Someone slides down to 7th, 8th place, and they're like, "Oh, he's not that strong." He's literally the 7th strongest man in the entire world. So.
Yeah. And he wasn't always a strong man either. People forget that.
No, he was a basketball player, and he was a basketball player in Colorado. He played in college, and then after college, he went down and he was a strength coach at ASU for a little bit. And then he went back up to Colorado, and that's when he kind of got into strongman. And luckily he did, because I do think the sport's better for it. Definitely. And I think that's one of the things, it's not just one of those who has the most titles, because then everybody loves PUDs, right? But who has the most titles while being the best ambassador for the sport? And that's kind of what I look at in all the sports that I like. I definitely think that being an ambassador for the sport you love shows a lot more capabilities than world records and titles does. So,
and I think you gotta have a little personality that goes with it, because you said Simerson, Kazmaier, like all those guys, they were larger than life in my opinion.
Yeah, and Kaz, I've met him, and just one of the nicest guys, and you want to look at him and go, do you know who you are? Like, you're sitting here, I was at the Olympia Expo, and he helped me, pick out which SBD sleeves to get, and helped fit me with them, right? And it's just a surreal moment. Bill Kazmaier is helping me with my elbow sleeves. It's unreal, and it just doesn't seem, and I don't put people on a pedestal like that. I think that it's not a good thing for the sport to put these people, in a realm above us. But it's definitely one of those surreal things where you're like, man, like, you could be on a beach somewhere. You don't have to be here, but yet you're talking to, I think at the time I was 245 pounds, 250 pounds, and here he is helping me fit my sleeves. Didn't have no idea who the hell I was. So,
awesome.
and I've I've met a few of the guys that way, and Brian, another one, met him down at Beerstone for the third time. I think I'd met him down there, and a great ambassador, good guy. Will sit and talk to you. We literally talked for about 45 minutes, so I definitely, those people that, have like that more of a personal connection, that I've actually met and stuff. I think I look up to a little bit more because I can verify that they are good people. You have some in the sport that are, for lack of better terms, assholes. And I think, honestly, I think the sport's pushing those ones out, on their own. Yeah. I mean, Evan Singleton, when he first came on the scene, I was like, man, not this guy. And now I watch some of his behind the scenes stuff, and I'm like, he's a really cool dude, So, so definitely, I think the sport's kind of moving towards that way where it's huge community, and I won't go to dinner and break bread with someone that I don't like, and I think the sport's getting that way too. Like, hey, if we don't like you, we'll give you a second chance, like they did Pablo, but. They give Pablo a second chance, and luckily they did because that guy's turned his tune around, and now he's an incredible athlete. He's going to be a threat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, and I think it is one of those sports where the community is so small that, hey, your name's going out there real quick. It's either going to be, a really good person or they want nothing to do with you. And then when that comes down to it, you can be like, hey, I want to do your competition. We're filled up. No, we don't need you. Paul, who would you say your influencers were, growing up? Because you met some of these people too, I believe.
Yeah, listening to Troy, my background was powerlifting, so I was able to meet some high level powerlifters for sure. Growing up in Massachusetts, moved to California. It was all powerlifting, but I always appreciated strongman. And strongman, World's Strongest Man and high level strongman contests were always covered in Powerlifting USA, which I grew up to eventually write for. I wrote and I became friends with the owner, and I have every issue. When I started lifting, a guy gave me every issue from 77 when it started till it stopped in 2012. Anyways, I was a huge Kaz fan, right? So, but I'd never met him. So word came out that World's Strongest Man was in Vegas. So I drove over with my wife from Southern California. None of my training partners went. It was Columbus Day weekend. And the weekend before, they had US Strongest Man there, and that had been taped for ESPN. But we check into the hotel, and it's no internet in 97. So you kind of don't know what the events are. But we go into the hotel restaurant to eat because we've been traveling from California all day. And my wife and I get separated because it's like a buffet, right? And I come back to the table, and Bill Kazmaier is talking to my wife, and he had approached her and said, hey, who's that guy you're with? Like, he's big and strong. And I was like, that's Kaz. He sat with us. I have it in my gym. I have an 8x10 of him pressing the inch dumbbell. So when they say don't meet your idol, they'll disappoint. You'll be disappointed. I was totally blown away by how humble he was, how nice he was. Like, he was like, man, you should get into strongman. You got the frame, you got the grip. Look at your strength. I shook his, and it was surreal. So it was everything and then some. So I have yet to meet a high level strength athlete that's ever disappointed me. But when I was in Southern California, I met a few bodybuilders that left a lot to be desired in their persona and their attitude and their belief. If you could have sold those people for what they thought they were worth, they would have been rich. But and that's not all the case with like some of them, but be that as may, that's what's always attracted me to strength athletics is the people that the quality and the ilk of the people that are humbled by actually testing their strength and proving it in front of a knowledgeable audience and in their peers. There's no other proving ground. Probably other than high level fighters that later in life they're rivals and they have to fight, but you can see there's mutual respect later for the most part, right? So quite similar.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. You're on the platform with somebody else. Like I tell people all the time, I say even though they're called competitions, they're more like meets. It's a simple fact that like I don't want to see anybody fail at these events. And let's just say if Troy and I were going for a 600-pound squat, and I missed mine, and I know he's going next, I want to see him hit it because, for one, that's a hell of an accomplishment, and you want to see that weight move. So I'm gonna be in his corner, like, let's go. I screwed it up, but dude, let's go. Let's do this. Somebody's got to hit this weight, you know. And that's the best thing about it. It's just basically like meet and greets. Like, you might not see somebody for a few months because obviously they're training for their programs for 6 months, 8 months. Then you see them again, and man, you're picking up right where you left off the last time you seen them, and that's what's really cool about it.
I definitely think it's the only niche that you'll find, you know, and I've done it multiple times. People have done it for me, but you know, one of your competitors in your class will give you their gear to do an event, you know, and that's rare. That's very, very rare in any other sport, I'm sure. You know, LeBron would never give his extra pair of shoes to his competitor. You know what I mean? Because he broke his soul or whatever. You know, it wouldn't have happened. But I don't know how many times I've lent out gear, you know, to someone in my class, and they're like, "Really? Yeah, dude, I'm here to beat me, and if you can beat me too, then more power to you, man." You know, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for, I want to beat you at your best, and not you have an excuse of like, well, could have done better, but I didn't have my knee wraps. Well, I got you. Do better. You're gonna, you know,
Do
that's
next
just
time.
gonna push me. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, absolutely. That's good community.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the questions I do, I'm going to get a little personal real quick, but it is something I like to kind of throw out there to hear what every Pearson that's on the show has to say in their own words, you know. So obviously, you know, your wife, Carrie, she's an IFBB pro now as well, correct? Right?
Correct. Yeah.
So how is it, and what's the secret, or is there a secret of maintaining a relationship, let alone a marriage, and concentrating on a level that you guys do for your professional, you know, attributes of going in these sports? Like, what keeps it, like, what keeps you guys going to the gym, and what keeps you guys together?
Well, I would say that drive, right? Like, I mean, we both want to be bigger and better than we were yesterday. So we still, you know, it's easy when you don't have to, you know, hey, I'm sorry, I got to leave the family because I got to go train, and your spouse doesn't understand that aspect, right? Because some spouses don't, you know, it's like, well, just skip the gym today. You went yesterday, you know, so we don't have that issue. And I think that's the biggest thing, because although sometimes we get selfish against, you know, for the gym, it's not seen that way because they have that same drive. So it almost, you know, there's days where I get home from work and I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym. And she goes, well, I'm going. So you can either sit here or you can go with me. And you're like, all right, you know, because the last thing I want her to do is come through the door when she gets back from the gym and start making fun of me. Like, hey, what up, Pansy? You didn't go to the gym, you know? So we keep each other accountable that way, and we don't get our feelings hurt when we have to be selfish. I think the hard part for us, you know, that people would see as the hard part is she diets differently than I do. You know, I get a lot more cheat meals, we'll call them.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a little hard for her. She's in prep right now for her pro debut, and it's hard for me because I try to be, you know, understanding and you know, not eat my bowl of ice cream in front of her. You know, so sometimes I go without, and there's that give and take there too. So, but then she goes, no, you need you know, you need this meal, so I'll just make something else, or we'll go get something else as well. You know, so it would seem to be the hard part, but I think it works out well. You know, but being able to have that understanding and that equal drive helps out a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I always use the term power couples. You know, you got you and Carrie, you got Rafe, Melissa, you got Doug and Andrea, and a couple others over there at Beast West, and you just see it. It's like, man, that's like, it's just really cool to see that, you know, people are just there together, same aspirations, and you know, like I said, this sport, you know, it's I always say, you know, iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel. When you find two people that are just on the same page and they get it, oh man, it's like it's just really cool to see that person compete, you know, because you know they got everything that they're going for you. And I don't know, to me, it just was one dynamic that I think that people, like you said, you know, they kind of lose in translation. Like, well, you went yesterday, why go today? It's like, but that's your thing. It's like, Do you want me to go to the
How this
bar?
works.
Do you want me to be, you want me to go to the bar, spend all time there, waste all our money, be abusive, just be a piece of garbage, or go to the gym and you get to enjoy all this, but not me because I have a face and a body for radio, so I'll never get that aspect. But no, it's just something that I think a lot of people that always come to me and like listeners, you always ask about that, or they see that because you always see like, hey, where's your girlfriend? No, I dumped her because she just kind of get in my way. It's like, well, that's kind of a weird solution, But I think communication is the biggest thing too, and just respecting the person that is trying to accomplish their goals.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not saying that your spouse has to enjoy the gym as much as you,
Right?
but as long as they can understand that aspect, and Carrie and I got together, we were already lifting, separately in life. We both had made a path in our fitness industry, or lifetime, or whatever you want to call it. But so it was an easy transition into that of, hey, I'm going to the gym. Yeah, me too. Let's go. So it worked out well. I think if you have that understanding, going into a relationship, you'll be more solid.
Paul, what do you got? Any take on that?
I think it's important that you have that support system. All my competitive career, I was always in a very supportive relationship. Somebody that supported my goals, and the greatest, to be kind of clinical about it, the greatest PED is sleep. So if you're a young guy trying to make strength gains and you're out all hours of the night looking for girls, chasing girls online, looking for girls, you're not going to be as strong. I mean, it's a fact. I mean, so that companionship really helps, and it's stability. And, a lot goes into a relationship, and respect and so forth. It should be mutually beneficial. But yeah, I've seen it over the years, people in a relationship where they're trying to explain, or they say, oh, I want to train with you, but let me clear it with my spouse. I'm like, well, it's not that much a commitment to train 3 days a week for 2 hours or an hour and a half. I don't understand that. That's so foreign to me. Why someone would want to be in something that would want to better themselves. So the age-old adage of girls like, well, now that you're in with me, why do you want to stay in shape? You want to look at girls at the gym, or you want to be in shape for someone else? So to me, a lot of that's superficial, and it's I do think behind every good person that's successful in the strength endeavor, especially as you get up there, in your late 20s and mid to late 20s, you are in a stable relationship that's rewarding. When you're younger, you could probably go without it while you're building your foundation, but that's my take on it. Like, I can't, and I would never trade success in an iron sport for a relationship that was trying to hold me back either. If I was a person, that would be my advice. And be respectful. And then sometimes, like when I saw Rafe on Saturday, I hadn't seen Troy in a bit, and Rafe, I hadn't seen him in a while, and he was telling me, oh, now I'm married to somebody famous. Rafe was kind of joking, but like, good for them.
No,
like success begets success. You know what I'm saying? So it's really good. And you can see as a result, we all benefit because their gym continues to flourish, and it affords us the opportunity to train at great facilities here in town, and opportunities to compete, which they've done so much for the community. So their relationship's really been fruitful for all of us. So I encourage it. People should be with people that they respect and support each other and allow them to pursue their goals,
Yeah, and you had something real quick I want to talk about. It is, it was the phrase of oh, you're getting better in shape when you can go look at girls at the gym. It's like, dude, first of all, the places that we train at, and I'm sure the place that you guys all belong to, sure, we've all been in that box gym, which is where you'll find that. You go to a gym everybody goes to, just wants to get in there, try and stay healthy, try and do something. Sure, people are going to talk because they're not there to train. Beast Strong Powerhouse is a training center. And if you go to a gym like that, we'll come in. I think we have few moments when we first see each other, the initial, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And then when you guys are about ready to leave is when we actually talk. That might be what prolongs the gym time. But when all the athletes and all the people inside that training center, they're there to train. They're not there trying to pick up chicks or pick up guys. It is a serious matter, and we know that, and we respect that amongst ourselves. That's why I love that gym. That's why I love any gym like that, because you're there to do business. You know, it really is. You're not there to screw around. I'm there to put in hard work, and then I'm going to go home. But of course, my buddies show up, and that's, like you said, if you want to sit there and shoot the shit for a little bit, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. I know it's getting kind of late because we had the storm, not the power out for the first half of this. But the one thing I do want to ask you, Troy, is what are some of the mistakes or maybe some of the mythos that you heard about, you know, lifting heavy or doing strongman or powerlifting that you found were false? And for those mistakes you made, what are some things you wish you would have learned sooner?
So the mistakes and that I wish I would have learned sooner is the old no train or no stretching type thing. Recovery has become more important to me since the surgery. I had to learn that the hard way, you know, but none of my training partners stretched. None of us, you know, warming up was the first rep with an empty implement. That was warming up, you know. So I had that ingrained in me that's how you warmed up, you know, and we trained literally until the last minute of our available time, you know, and then literally unload and then we're out the door jumping in the car to get home, you know. Right. So that I could kind of not learn, you know, to a heavy degree and stretch a little bit more and take care of that recovery. You know, I usually only do recovery and stretching once I'm hurt, you know, and then I'm playing catch up. So, and then the other thing is that, you know, that you don't have to be strong to start competing, you know. I think that waiting to compete until you're strong, you're not gonna know where you stand or how much stronger you have to be, because you're never gonna be strong enough, you know. So nobody, you know, wakes up and goes, "Yep, I've reached that point where I'm strong enough now. I'll be done." You know, so you have to compete to be able to understand what that level is. So I think those are, you know, two things that really I should have implemented better earlier on.
And what are some of the myths you think you've seen that, like, oh, don't do this, you know, but then you're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense because now I've done that and it actually works, or vice versa, or do this, that's horrible, it's not going to work, that doesn't help you at all.
No, I mean, tons of people tell me my training style is not going to work. And I prove those myths wrong, or I think. I don't know. Actually, you know, off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't know any myths that, you know, I try not to listen to those kind of things. You know, you start filling your head with these myths and negativities, and then you dwell on those. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay. I got you. Paul, is there anything that you think that you learned along the way that you kind of like you broke that myth? And I think, Troy, I think the reason why when people tell you that, I think it's more or less your personality, like, oh, okay, I can't do this. Watch this. You're going to do it regardless.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fortunately, Wes, I got pretty strong. I surrounded myself at a time with really strong people. You know, Josh Bryant was the youngest guy to bench 600 raw. So to have him come in helped. Art LeBaire, people that I highlight on my Instagram that I trained at what was called Yorba Barbell. So I was around a lot of strong guys, but I was always very open-minded and instinctual. And I saw what worked, you know, and I saw what worked for other people. And I had read a lot, and then I saw what worked for me. And I was fortunate. I had times where I overtrained. In retrospect, if I could go back, I would have not embraced the West Side method, the max effort method. Like if I didn't hit a record single, sometimes I would get disgusted and not do assistance. I would do a little bit more assistance work. And I was fortunate. I hit all my lifetime PRs that are on, when we were talking earlier, openpowerlifting.org is a great site on the Valor and Venom YouTube channel. If you're looking for what anybody's ever lifted in a powerlifting contest, they get about 90% of it right. It's a fantastic site. So openpowerlifting.org. So if you look at my best list of 810, 534, and 750, they're all done at competitions. I'm very proud of that. Anytime I was hurt, the 2 times I tore my pec, I did that in the gym, and it was stupid. It was ego. And one time I had my elbow tendon detached because I was spotting somebody on kneeling squats and they hadn't tightened the collar. So make sure you pay attention in the gym, tighten the collars yourself, and but prepare properly. And if anything, if I go back, I'd rest a little bit more. I would have rested every third or fourth week, and I wouldn't have pushed through. We wouldn't have taken 2 scoops of Ultimate Orange and a Red Bull. And when I was a little tired, and it's kind of like my house was the spot for 5 years in my garage. So when you run, if it's your spot, you have a tendency not to lay back. And winning my garage was the fight. And in retrospect, it shouldn't have been that way because I was successful, but I could have been more successful. I could have had a 2,200 pound total instead of 2,094 if I laid back a little bit more and was better to myself. But if you've seen The Sopranos, right? Remember they used to have the card game. If you host the card game every week, you gotta show up. You don't want to lose in your backyard, So,
right.
But I love the journey and I love the people I've met like yourself. I love you guys. I appreciate you. I appreciate the camaraderie. So just be good to yourself. And, if you need rest, back off a little bit more. That's what I'd tell anybody.
I think that's the number one thing that people just don't do. And for my personal opinion, and Paul knows this, so we've talked about this, is my first competition was with you, Troy. But I agree 100% on what you said about it's never too early to go into it. If you want to do it, go do it. Because then you're going to find out if you've got the heart for it, which is what it is, or you understand the process of getting to that certain level. Because I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. That's where, I grew up. And anybody knows anything about Cleveland, Ohio, or Ohio in general, what do you got in Columbus? We said it on the show earlier. You got West Side. So I'd be like 14, 15, 16 years old and go check out these powerlifting competitions. And I'm looking at these mutants. I don't care what anybody says. It's like, what is this? And I'm thinking, this is what it is to be powerlifter? Well, shit, I'm never going to do that. I mean, look at those numbers. Like, are you kidding me? And for the final, what Will Sell Barbell is all about. Not saying it wasn't a bad thing or anything like that, but it was a cult, and these guys lived and breathed it. And when I moved out to California and whatnot, and started like kind of beyond the gym, I was like, oh, I'm actually stronger than that guy. So let me dabble in this a little bit. Never did competition, but we'd host our own unshaven competitions, just try like in the Marines and whatnot. But now it's just one of those things. I think when you grow up, if you're around it, I think if you get bit by the bug, then it sticks with you for life. It's something about the gym. I mean, for me, I use it for mental as more as I do physical, and then we'll do a show probably about mental health and all that stuff about how the gym helped you out with that. But it's just one of those things, man. You just can't let it go, And I think that every time that we kind of hit a bumper or like a path in the road, it's like, what path are we going to take, the right or wrong? We tend to always go toward the path that's going to better ourselves by using the gym to refocus and to get back on track.
Absolutely.
So that's just my opinion. But well, Troy, so we've been talking for almost about an hour and a half now with everything that's been going on. Hopefully you had a great time. I hope that, you enjoyed this, and we absolutely appreciate you being on here. And, it's always a pleasure watching you train, watching you work. And Paul and I get the privilege of actually kind of documenting, your growth in the sport. Like you said, the first thing I ever did was a Strength Fest. There's me with 2 cameras looking like an idiot, trying to film whatever I can to, what we have here. And I mean, a lot of that success is for you, Rafe, and Melissa, for allowing us to capture that and build something with it. So like I said, from the bottom of my heart, man, dude, it's been a pleasure knowing you, not only as a professional but also as a friend. I look up to you, and it's always interesting.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's always interesting watching at the competitions too, man, and seeing everybody. So is there any words of wisdom?
I try to make it fun.
Oh, you do. Is there any words of wisdom you want to leave with everybody?
Well, everything I say is a word of wisdom. Just enjoy the journey and surround yourself with good people. Luckily here in Tucson, we do have that good group of people, and they push us, and make sure you're pushing somebody else as well. Don't just take all the love for yourself. So just be a good ambassador for yourself in your sport, and I think you'll be all right in life.
Absolutely. And just so you guys know that are watching, is that we're going to have the next Beast Strong event is going to be Stack Monsters, the 29th in October. So I always say it's kind of like an introduction to Strongman, because it is just 2 implements. If you want to try and get into it, it's a static log press and a wagon wheel deadlift. And all you got to do is Google some kind of strongman gym or find out they have implements there, or come on down to Beast Strong Powerhouse if you're in the Tucson area. You want to check it out. And then the other one we have at the end of the year, which is the big one, was Battle of the Beast. So those are two that Paul and I always enjoy doing, and I know Troy's going to be there, whether in competition or they're maybe officiating or announcing or whatnot with us.
This year I'm going to sit them out. I'll be at the table with you guys and running around trying to keep it running smoothly. So
As well it should be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here. So that was the interview with one of Tucson's very own, THEE Troy Shanks, member and a coach of Beast Strong Powerhouse. And again, as you see over here to my right side, that is the incredible, the American treasure, Paul Leonard. And of course, it's me, SLC, the American Outlaw, from Valor and Venom, Sean L. Christ. And we are signing off tonight. You have a great day and continue the grind. We'll see you all later.
we on live now?
It's good. I'm starving.